Hello, welcome once again to Stuff and Things, where I like to talk about stuff and occasionally even things. I'm your good friend Bradley, and today it is a Sunday Stuff and Things. And on this Sunday Stuff and Things, we will talk about things that you can look forward to on Stuff and Things and working. We'll talk a little bit about the holiday season, of course, and then we have to get into a subject that has come up a lot on the channel. We're going to try to avoid politics with this, but we need to talk about capitalism. We're going to try to have a discussion about this without it devolving into sort of the worst excesses of the internet age. We'll see about that. So let's get into it. Lots of stuff to talk about. All right, gang, so what can you look forward to on Stuff and Things and working? Well, first of all, coming up for Christmas, we will be doing my blend spotlight on Cringle Flake 2024. After all the stuff we've been discussing with STG and Sutliff and McFadin, there is a certain poignancy to this video because this is probably, pretty much definitely going to be the last version of Cringle Flake we get. So be sure to check that out. And I recorded that video kind of before I knew all that. I didn't have all the information yet. So this video was recorded quite a while ago, but the opinion I had about the blend wouldn't have changed. But now we know that this is probably it for Cringle Flake and for Sutliff in general. The week after that, we will have a video on urban wildlife photography. I've shown you a few pictures, I think in the past couple weeks, that I've been taking running around in my city finding cool wild animals to photograph. So we'll be talking about that. After that, we will be doing first impressions for Cornell and Diehl small batch 8-state Burley. This is the 2022 version. Let's start highlighting some more Cornell and Diehl blends on the channel. I think that's a good idea. And then, after that, I'm going to do a video on why you should probably have your old film camera serviced. Recently, I sent my old Nikon FE2, probably, how old would that be? Over 40 years old. I sent it away to be serviced. I had kind of a cloudy ADR window. I don't want to get into it, but basically there's just a couple little things. I was like, let's get this checked out. I thought the camera was working fine. It would jam up on me every once in a great while. And I sent it away, and I was really debating whether or not I should do this because the cost of getting it serviced was about the same as replacing it, or maybe even a little bit more expensive if you got a good deal. And I'm thinking, should I really do this? And I figured at the end of the day, they're not making these cameras anymore, so I might as well send it away, get it looked at by a reputable camera repair technician, and then I'll know that I can rely on it for years instead of kind of rolling the dice and getting a camera where even if it looks good, I don't necessarily know if it's going to function well. And when I did that, I got some pictures back and kind of a little narrative from the repair technician. And my God, I am glad I sent this away. And so I think this will be a cool video. I'm going to be getting the camera back within a couple days, so I'll be able to make a video on that soon. Pretty fascinating stuff. We're kind of in holiday hiatus right now. I have some footage that I can edit down, but we'll probably not be posting anything on working until after the first of the year. But stay tuned, more is coming. Don't worry, I haven't abandoned working. We will be getting back to the normal cadence of videos on there. So, lots of stuff to look forward to. Please stay tuned. Merry Christmas, 2024. Typically, I will do a video every Christmas, a kind of Christmas-related video. This Sunday Stuff and Things is coming out on Sunday, obviously, a few days before Christmas. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Yeah, a few days before Christmas. Christmas is on Wednesday this year. I've not been feeling very Christmassy, and I don't want to belabor this because I don't want to Grinchify your holiday cheer that you may be having, but this has not been a good year. And for me, typically, me feeling Christmassy has to do with there being someone to share that Christmassy feeling with. So if you have a partner, if you have a wife or a husband, if you have children, I can see myself getting way more into the Christmas spirit, maybe decorating, putting some lights up, putting a tree up, all that good stuff, getting some eggnog and things like that, and doing Christmassy things. And I kind of had some traditions that had developed with my ex where, you know, we would go to the apple orchard and buy a Christmas decoration and get apples and put up the tree and do all these things. I don't have a wife or a husband. I don't have kids. I don't have a partner. I don't have any of those things right now. And so I'm not feeling very Christmassy. I'm not putting up a tree. I'm not decorating anything. I'm not doing any Christmassy things other than going to see, you know, my family on Christmas Day. So yeah, you will forgive me for not doing any Christmas related videos this year. I guess we do have the Cringle Flake. I always want to say Cringle cake. Cringle Flake review, which will be up on Christmas Day. But aside from that, yeah, I'm definitely kind of grinchy this year. Okay, gang. I am definitely courting trouble by bringing this subject up, but I think it's time to talk about capitalism. This is probably such a bad idea. Now, I want to make sure that you understand the spirit of this conversation. This is not in any way politically motivated. I'm not trying to use this as a, aha, gotcha to any side. I do not take sides on here on this channel. I hate all that discourse, not into that at all. But when I was talking about the Scandinavian tea group acquiring McFadin and through McFadin, Sutliff, and just some of the things that they were doing, things that I didn't like, or that from the information I have right now, I don't look at very fondly, a lot of people were mentioning capitalism in the responses to those videos or in the comments saying, well, this is what you get with capitalism. Oh, you think you like capitalism? Well, this is what you get. Big corporations gobbling up smaller companies. And so I really felt like it was time, even though I am not an economist. No, I am not an economist. I think you all know that. I do not have the most educated perspective on economic systems, on capitalism, socialism, all sorts of things, free markets, mercantilism, agrarianism from like the 17th century in England. I don't know a ton about all of these things, but I think I have a fairly basic working understanding of these things. And I think that the problem we're having in a lot of the public discourse about, quote, capitalism, is that people don't really understand what that means. People look at any sort of excess that involves a private company and say, well, there's capitalism for you. And I'm like, well, kind of, because that can happen under the umbrella of a capitalistic system, but that is not, quote, capitalism. It's not, quote, capitalism. I used this example before when I remember when COVID hit and there were aisles in the supermarket where there should have been toilet paper, but there was no toilet paper. And people were taking pictures of these empty toilet paper aisles and posting them online and saying, welcome to late stage capitalism. And I thought, what does this have to do with capitalism? It's not a feature of capitalism that you don't have toilet paper when there is a pandemic fear and people are freaking out and panic buying things. That's not a feature of capitalism. It can happen within capitalism, but then what's the alternative to that? A centrally planned economy where the government is distributing toilet paper? I don't know if you ever saw any pictures of grocery store aisles in the Soviet Union before the collapse. There was not a lot on those grocery store aisles either, okay? So I don't know what point people were trying to make, but it just seems like whenever anything goes wrong economically within a country in which capitalism is sort of the basis for their economic system, people blame it on capitalism. So let's talk about this a little bit. I got a comment from Electrocuted, not Electrocuted, who says, it is contradictory to say, I like capitalism, and then say that you want small companies to exist. A 4-year-old can comprehend it. Das Kapital. So here we go. This to me is somebody just fundamentally not understanding what capitalism means. I had a response to this. I said, no, it's not. Do you know what capitalism is? At the most basic level, it means private ownership of the means of production operated for profit, as opposed to a government-run, centrally planned economy. As with any system, it needs to be well regulated for it to run properly, including preventing monopolies, price fixing, and other things that limit competition. Do you like private property? Property rights, entrepreneurship, the ability to do what you want with your own money, including starting your own business if you wish. Then you probably like capitalism. Next, we had a comment from @AlexanderPsi, who says, capitalism and commerce are not the same thing. Commerce is about the free exchange of goods in a market between customers and businesses. Capitalism is what you're describing right now. Large corporations who are not private businesses but a stock exchange of investors focused on their efficiency to make the most bucks for their stockholders. I cannot speak. I responded to this. And I'm not trying to jump on these people. I think I know what you mean, but I have to disagree. Capitalism, at its most basic level, means the private ownership of property, business, and industry with the purpose of making a profit. There are all sorts of abuses which can take place within the framework of capitalism, but I don't think we want to get rid of private ownership and private business and move to a centrally planned and controlled economy. Thanks for watching. So again, I think this has to do with people not understanding the definition of capitalism. Let's look at a few definitions. I just plugged it into Google to see what would happen, and Google has gotten so horrible now that they're using their generative AI for their top search results, but I was curious to see what Google would come up with. So their AI definition: capitalism is an economic system where private individuals and organizations own the means of production, and prices, products, and distribution are determined by competition in a free market. Yeah, basically. Private ownership. Private individuals and organizations own the factors of production, such as land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Free market. Prices, products, and distribution are determined by competition in a free market. Profit motive. The essential feature of capitalism is the motive to make profit. Supply and demand. The production of goods and services is based on supply and demand in the general market. Capitalism differs from centrally planned or command economies where the government owns companies and the factors of production. Yeah, I can't disagree with you, Google. What does the Cambridge Dictionary say? An economic and political system in which property, business, and industry are controlled by private owners rather than by the state with the purpose of making a profit. So we're hearing this a lot. Private ownership of capital, property, and businesses, running those businesses with the purpose of making a profit. What does Wikipedia say? Capitalism is an economic system based on private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit. That's the most basic definition of capitalism. The defining characteristics of capitalism include private property, capital accumulation, competitive markets, price systems, recognition of property rights, self-interest, economic freedom, meritocracy, work ethic, consumer sovereignty, economic efficiency, decentralized decision-making, profit motive, a financial infrastructure of money and investment that makes possible credit and debt, entrepreneurship, commodification, voluntary exchange, wage labor, production of commodities and services, and a strong emphasis on innovation and economic growth. In a market economy, decision-making and investments are determined by owners of wealth, property, or ability to maneuver capital or production ability in capital and financial markets, whereas prices and the distribution of goods and services are mainly determined by competition in goods and service markets. So, again, if you believe in private ownership, if you believe that if you want to be able to do what you want with your capital, if you want to be able to acquire property, acquire capital, and then use that property or capital and transfer it into the ownership of a business that you can then run to make a profit, you like capitalism. If you would rather have an economy that is government-controlled, centrally planned, in which private citizens do not own the businesses or the means of production, and in which the government owns all manufacturing capability, all businesses, they're the ones who produce everything and set the prices for everything and distribute those goods, then you don't like capitalism. Now, there are as many ways to do capitalism as there are countries in the world. And there are all sorts of arguments, debates you could have about different limits on capitalism, how much government control there should be, how much regulation there could be. There are, of course, all sorts of excesses that can take place. There's crony capitalism, anarcho-capitalism, completely free market capitalism, so many different kinds of capitalism. And you could look at corporations, overreach, corruption, price fixing, monopolies, all sorts of things that are bad for the end consumer. And yes, those things can exist within a capitalist system. But that's not what the definition of capitalism is. And the alternative to capitalism is one that I don't think most people who criticize capitalism would enjoy living under. It's just, we need to understand what these terms mean. We need to have a common definition of terms. And when people rail against capitalism, I've known people who will talk about how much they hate capitalism, and then you ask them what they do for a living, they're like, oh, I own a business where I give Reiki massages to people. I'm like, okay, well that's capitalism. You own a business. You are charging a price. You are making a profit. You are setting the price for the services you are offering. That's capitalism. And people, I guess people just think that capitalism only means giant corporations gobbling up small businesses. But the small businesses are capitalism too. Yeah, so I have a good quote here. One of my favorite economists is a man named Glenn Loury, who I absolutely love. He's fantastic. He's a professor at Columbia. He has written several books. He's just an interesting guy. And there was, I guess I grabbed this from a YouTube video. It's Why the US Needs Capitalism and Meritocracy, Glenn Loury and Jason Riley. And I don't know if I'm going to read all of this. I might paraphrase it a little bit. But Jason Riley says, talking to Glenn Loury, you mentioned you're an economist. Let me ask you, as an economist, you mentioned that this is a battle of ideas. One of the ideas that the left in general has put forward is that the real problem in terms of racial inequality in this country is capitalism. So they're talking about this through the framework of social justice, racial inequality, and things like that. But the response that Glenn gives, or that Professor Loury gives, is more about capitalism in general. About capitalism, that it doesn't work, and it certainly doesn't work to close the gaps that we all want to see narrowed, if not closed entirely, and that we need to stop going down this route. We need to move forward, or we need to move towards a larger welfare state, something in line with the social democracies of Western Europe. If we want to see less inequality, how do you respond to that argument as an economist? Glenn Loury responds, I think it's mistaken. I think the history of the 20th century demonstrates its error. You make the point in your opening remarks. You said that when the economy prospers, when there's economic growth, when there's a tight labor market, that's good for people at the bottom. And I think that's what the data show. But I think the point is much deeper than that. Capitalism, if I may say so, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, is the foundation of our prosperity. It's what makes possible the idea that we would have social justice. Without the dynamism, without the incentives, without the aspiration to accumulate wealth, without the ingenuity, without the creativity, without starting new companies, without creating new ideas, without the hope that people have that they can make their lives better through their own efforts, we're done. This is a dynamic, open society. When people march with their feet looking for better lives, this is where they want to come. Capitalism is the foundation of what makes possible the prosperity for the American society. Is it perfect? No. Is there a need for regulation and so forth? Of course. But the idea that you would adopt a centralized, social control, government-dominated way of allocating resources and making social decisions, that's the road to serfdom. And I think I'll leave it there. All right, gang. Hopefully you enjoyed that. We're going kind of long here, but now it is time for hashtag askstuffandthings. Remember, if you have a question for me and you would like it answered on Sunday Stuff and Things, you can tweet at SATBradley with the hashtag askstuffandthings. Nobody does that anymore, but if you want to, you can. Or if you're a Patreon supporter, you can write to me via Patreon, go right to the front of the line. You can hit that super thanks button under this video and go right to the front of the line, or you can leave questions, comments, and feedback under my YouTube videos. I try to get through all of them. I don't always succeed, but I do my best. First of all, we had a weird comment here. I don't really know what to make of this. And maybe they're trolling, I'm not sure, but this is from @EricStevens7922, who posted this on an old video of me talking about like the Peterson system pipes and the reservoir that they have in there. And I didn't even know what he was talking about at first, but he says, Why do you say it like that? Exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point. It's res of war, not reservoir. Listen how they pronounce the movie, Reservoir Dogs. What? What's going on? The word reservoir. I have always said reservoir. I think almost everyone I know or have come across has said reservoir. I don't know if this person is from a different country. I don't know if they say reservoir in England as opposed to reservoir. But I just, out of curiosity, I looked it up on, I don't know if it was dictionary.com or whatever online dictionary it was. The very first pronunciation was reservoir, the way I say it. The second pronunciation was res of war. Okay, you don't need to get angry. It's fine. I think the way I say it is probably more common, but they're both listed as acceptable pronunciations, and I think you'll live. Next, we have some feedback from last week's Sunday Stuff and Things. This is from @Mr. Pink. Speaking of Reservoir Dogs, that's interesting. 1996 says, I hope McFadin keeps their HH line. I'm going to stockpile their Burley Flake anyways, just in case. I hope so too. From what we've been able to determine, it doesn't seem like anything from Sutliff is going to exist unless it gets sold off to another company. I'm hoping the HH line from McFadin exists. I have gotten back in touch with the person I had been in touch with previously from STG, hoping to have a conversation at one point. They don't want to do it over email, though. They want to actually have a phone conversation, and it's tough for me because I work. I work every day. I don't work in an office either. I work on a construction site, and so it's really hard for me to take an hour out of my day and have a phone conversation, but we'll hopefully make that happen. We have @GuyTZ77. I'm definitely going to support Cornell and Diehl, but I'm going to wait and see what happens with STG and what blends stay or go. In the end, if they get rid of all the blends I love, STG will force me to spend my money elsewhere, not a boycott where I suffer from not getting product from existing stock. Sounds reasonable. @Gary Blankenship 104 says, aside from Cornell and Diehl, can you give us a list of other independent manufacturers? So a lot of people are mentioning this. I don't know if I didn't say this or maybe people weren't hearing this. Cornell and Diehl is not independent. They are owned. Most of these companies are owned by other companies, but Cornell and Diehl does still manufacture pipe blends in the US, and they're not owned by a conglomerate that is quite as large as STG. So yeah, you can kind of weigh where your loyalties may be. As far as fully independent, smaller manufacturers, I mean, you can think of, there are some kind of brick and mortars who have an online presence where they produce their own blends and stuff. But if anyone in the comments wants to shout out blenders that they love that are independent, that would be great. @The Hammer of Dissidence says, Bradley, do you have any recommendations for a replacement for HH Old Dark Fired? I fear about my all-day blend getting axed. I mean, everything that's coming to mind right now is produced by STG. God, I'm blanking on anything else. I mean, I kind of liked, what is the Orlik? But that's STG. Wasn't there a Solani that I liked that was dark fired? I don't know. Again, in the comments below, everything I'm thinking of is an STG blend, so that's probably not going to help you. Or I mean, if you don't mind getting STG, maybe it would. @Mr. Zandos 3344 says, vote with your dollar. It's the only vote that matters. @1122 Stardust says, honestly, I don't like Sutliff teas anyway. Always have the vinegar sauce flavor, and anyone complains about that McFadin, and everyone complains about that McFadin bite. Meh. I've seen several people make comments like this, and yeah, I'm not a huge fan of quite a few of the McFadin blends and quite a few of the Sutliff blends, but that doesn't mean I want them to go away, and it doesn't mean that I don't care that they're going away. So let's not do a selfish response. I guess a lot of people would say, hey, that's capitalism, selfishness. But yeah, other people might like these blends, and I think we are the poorer as a hobby if these blends go away. Next, we have a comment from, I don't know where their name went, from someone on the Stuff and Things video. And here I was hoping that Peterson was going to start releasing other Dunhill blends. Probably not. Yeah, I don't know. That's one thing I really want to ask the STG representative is, are all the former Dunhill blends going away? Are some of them going away? If Elizabethan goes away, not going to be pleased. But yeah, the idea that they're going to bring any more out, probably not going to happen. And finally, at Jason Kelsey 3441 says, STG dropped sales of the Dunhill-Peterson blends to Canada back when they took them over. Hard to maintain sales when you remove them from your entire markets. Yeah, and I've heard that people saying in Europe that a lot of them aren't available in a lot of their countries. Very strange. I don't know why that would be. I'm assuming it has to do with how much they were selling in those certain markets, but yeah, very strange. And then we have some feedback from the listening party, The Strokes' Is This It? One of my favorite albums of all time. At Zigmeister67 says, love The Strokes. Yeah. At Thomas Webb 248 says, I was unfamiliar with this band. Listened to the singles from this album, still didn't recognize them, and I thought they were terrible and sounded all exactly the same. Fair enough. I don't expect people like, I don't know how old you are, Thomas Webb, but I don't expect someone who's like 70 years old who loves pipe blend videos on YouTube. I don't expect that they're necessarily going to love an album by The Strokes. That stands to reason. That's fine. At Paul McBride 2699 says, I love this album. My older brother bought it and played it on his bedroom sound system. It brings back great memories, and we're from Scotland, so we had that album cover, the Naked Buttock album cover that I showed. We didn't get that in the US. At Briar Scholar says, absolutely love The Strokes and this album. I remember at the time hipsters called them Rich Kid Velvet Underground. I always loved the guitar tone, pure single coils through a tube amp. It doesn't get any better than that. I see you didn't do the version with New York City Cops, maybe a bonus track listening party. Yeah, all good stuff, except, I mean, everything you say is great, but I do want to point out, Albert Hammond Jr., one of the guitarists, does use a single coil Strat, a Fender Stratocaster, but Nick Valenci uses a Gibson, various Gibsons with humbucking pickup. So it's kind of the interplay between the humbucker and the single coils. That's the Strokes thing. And then we have at Aschutz 128, hopefully that doesn't mean something horrible in German. Please do more music reactions. I love watching music reactions, and the two you've done so far are already among my favorites. I discovered this band a few years ago, and Hard to Explain gets multiple listens weekly. One of my favorite songs of all time. It's a great song. Yeah, we'll see. Again, like, these take quite a bit to do. They don't really get any views, and I don't know. They get kind of squashed by YouTube because they're blocked in several countries and everything because of all the copyright stuff. So it's kind of shooting myself in the foot to do these, but if enough people like them, I will continue doing them. All right, thank you for all that feedback. Please keep it coming in, but now it is time for the very best part of the show, and that is where I thank our Patreon supporters. Remember, if you would like to support the channels on Patreon, there is a link in the description box below, and it is much appreciated. It's basically the only way that you can support this content, and it's kind of the only way that I can keep making these videos. YouTube does not let me monetize most things that have to do with pipes and pipe teas, and so your support on Patreon is what keeps this channel alive. There's a link in the description box below if you'd like to contribute. We're trying to get 105 $5 supporters. That's our goal, but every week we shout out the producers, the people who contribute more than their fair share. People like the $25 supporters, Jason Buckner, Arcturus, Ashes of the Phoenix, Jonathon Proctor, Charles Mowers, Friendly Piper, and the GreatGrol, our newest producer. And of course the Maniacs, the crazy people who support the channels at $100 a month, people like Bob Magee and Ryan McFadin. Thank you so much, and we'll never forget our dear friend and Hall of Fame member, Peter Straub. Gang, if you support on Patreon, you also get access to videos ad-free and early. So, think if that's something you might want to do, go check out that link in the description box below. Please stay tuned for all the good stuff we have coming up on Stuff and Things. The Cringle Flake 2024 video for Christmas, urban wildlife photography, first impressions, C&D, small batch, 8-state Burley 2022, why you should probably get your old film camera serviced, and then reconvening after the holidays. But until next time, until we meet again, I've been your good friend Bradley. You've been the audience. This has been Stuff and Things on a Sunday. Stuff and Things. Merry Christmas. We'll see you later. Bye.